Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Thomas Meredith. I'm the Vice President of Marketing, and on behalf of the Resource Management Institute, I'd like to welcome you to today's Power Up, Skills Management, Mission Critical to Effective Project Delivery. We're really excited to bring this topic to you today. We've got a nice big crowd on the line. I've got a few housekeeping items. I'm going to cover those quickly, and then we're going to get right to it because we do have a short window of just 30 minutes today. So I want to let everyone on the line know that we have made a PDF copy of this deck available. Your go-to webinar panel has a handouts window there, so you can download a PDF copy if you choose. We are recording this as well. Once we get that processed on our end, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording. Please, if you like what you heard today and you think another colleague might benefit, or maybe you know somebody who couldn't join us, feel free to email them and share that recording with them as well. And even though it's just a 30-minute session, we do have time at the end for a quick Q&A. So please, your GoToWebinar panel has a questions window. So please go ahead throughout the presentation. As something comes up, enter your question there because we'll pull those, and then we'll have our Q&A session at the end. Okay, like I said, just a few quick housekeeping items I'm going to get out of the way. I'll hand off now to Randy Mislovic, the Managing Director of the Resource Management Institute. Randy, welcome. I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate the introduction, and I want to welcome everyone to our third Power Up of the year. Hope everybody's getting good value from these topics. Our subject today is skills management, mission critical to effective project delivery. Of the challenges we see organizations have in the resource management area, this is clearly one of the top three that comes up all the time. So I hope you'll get good value out of this topic today. I want to also take special mention today for our sponsors, MavenLink, Upland 10 Rocks, and Keyed In. All three have been wonderful supporters of the RMI, supporters of this topic, and by virtue of their sponsorship, are showing their focus on resource management is a very important aspect of what they contribute through professional services automation and PPM tools. So thank you to our sponsors today. So let me move us along here, and I'm going to, for those of you who are new to the RMI, I'll do a quick commercial. We are dedicated to the advancement of resource and workforce management, and so to include best practices, standards, and globally recognized credentials to certify individuals in the area of resource and workforce management. We're working hard to build a community, making the RMI a vehicle to build a community around resource management, just as the project management community has been so effective in doing over the last 20 years. If you haven't been to our website, I encourage you to do so. And by the way, joining the Resource Management Institute is free. So you just go hit the join button, put in a little bit of information, and you'll be get continued announcements to events and access to white papers and research and other things. There are the three primary things I would draw your attention to. One is opportunities to collaborate through events like this. We've got a wonderful forum for you to communicate and collaborate with your resource management peers. We hope we're providing you good innovative thought leadership through the Institute, through white papers and research that we're doing, topics like today as an example, and opportunities to help you get educated through our Resource Management Certified Professional Program. We have an Introduction to Resource Management course, and of course, topics like this and research reports that we're publishing on deep research we're doing in resource management in the industry. So that's a quick overview of the RMI, and again, I hope if you haven't joined, you'll do that. With that, I want to take a minute and introduce again the topic skills management, mission critical to effective project delivery. I'll let you know at the end of this topic, we're going to take questions through the GoToWebinar panel. So there's a place where you can put questions into the question box, and we'll do our best to get to as many of those as we can. I would like to introduce at this time Brian Childers. He's a deep resource management expert. He leads our training practice in the business and knows a whole lot about this, and has done a lot of both the consulting work as well as training on the area of skills management. So with that, I'll turn the agenda over to Ryan Childers.
Hey, thanks, Randy. As Randy mentioned, again, my name is Ryan Childers. I'm the leader of the training practice at RTM Consulting. Really excited to be with you here this morning and talk about what I consider to be probably my favorite of our resource management functions and topics, and that's skills and skills management. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive in here. And so, just to kind of start us off, we know that effective project and service delivery, it absolutely starts with having talented resources with the right skills. We talk about just-in-time resourcing being all about getting the right person in the right place at the right time, and that means a couple of things. It means getting the right resource with the right skills in the right role on our project at the right time when we can use them to be effective for our project and ultimately for our client. And so in order to pull that off, we have to be able to characterize the skills and capabilities of our resource supply. And, while it seems easy enough to do that, actually putting it into practice takes having the right strategy, the right supporting processes, and a little help from our automation tools. And those are the things that we're going to talk about here this morning in our Power Up session. So we're going to focus on what a skills inventory is and what it's comprised of. We'll talk about some of the elements that we ought to consider when we're designing and building our skills inventory. And then we'll talk about what we can do with, once we have skills data, what is it we can do? What do the use cases look like for that skills data? And then the last thing I want to cover is how we can manage and maintain our skills data in that skills inventory so that it stays fresh and up to date and aligns with the needs of the business. And so, when we say skills inventory, what is it we actually mean? What is a skills inventory? We think of it as a comprehensive repository of skills that enables us to simply characterize our resource supply. And that enables us to do a couple of things here. It's built on this foundation of roles, skills, and proficiencies. It gives us the ability to standardize team member labels. And that's a big deal here, standardizing what we refer to our resources as. We do that by defining primary roles that are needed to deliver our projects and services. And then we take one additional step. We tag each of our resources with one primary role. And that's going to be important as we start thinking about developing this concept of a common language for discussing project roles and team member skills and start to accelerate the staffing process here. Our skills inventory also gives us a centralized repository that we can use to search for resources with the skills that we need, and then look a little more holistically at the skills our team has. So we're looking across everyone on the team, see what skills we have, or maybe skills that we don't have, and then we can start to figure out, where we may need some development as we overlay our supply and demand. And so our skills inventory gives us the data to actually start to do that. Can you flip? There you go. Perfect. So if we're thinking about, if we don't have a skills inventory in our organization today, we're thinking about going through the process of building and deploying that skills inventory, where is it we actually start? Well, the first place I would go is I would start thinking about the things that could influence my design. So first, where is it we're planning to house our skills data? Are we going to put it in a system? Are we thinking about spinning up a spreadsheet to house it? Ideally, this is a place where our PSA or our PPM system has some functionality that we can start to take advantage of. So if we assume that that's the case, we have a PSA or PPM system in place, it has a skills inventory built in that we can use. What are the capabilities of that skills repository? What are the attributes of a skill? What values are on that skill? Does our skills inventory and that functionality, does it enable skills to be categorized? If it does, how many levels of categorization does it support? What about our proficiency scales? How many levels of proficiency scales can we have? Can we define multiple proficiency scales? What are the values and attributes of those levels in our proficiency scales? We need to start thinking about some of those things. And then let's think about the data that resides on resource profiles in our PSA or PPM system. That may start to influence what needs to be defined as a skill versus data that we can go ahead and rely on that resource profile to provide for us. And then how will employees access skills data? And this needs twofold, right? So, if we build a skills inventory, we want to get good use out of it. So how are employees going to get to their skills in order to add them to their skills profile? And then the resources that generate demand in our organization, how are they going to get to skills in order to attach them to resource requests? So a number of things that we need to be cognizant of and start thinking through as we start designing our skills inventory. And so, with that design in mind, as we start thinking about the process to now build and go through the deployment process, there are a few other things that we actually need to do and get in place. And so we'll start at the bottom and kind of work our way up here. The first thing that we need to do is we need to define and create primary roles. And so I like to think about this by thinking first about how do we call resources, or how do we refer to resources out in the field. So we want to use a naming convention for our primary roles that's consistent with what's used out in the field. So a couple of places we can think about, what do we refer to resources as in an SOW or a project plan or a resource plan? We want to look across practices, geographies, teams, departments, however your organization is organized. Let's look across those kind of boundaries and let's come up with a master list of roles that are used out in the field, and let's normalize that list of roles and come up with a nice tight consolidated list that we can use across those boundaries as well. And then we want to go one step further, and in our PSA or PPM system, we want to tag each resource with one primary role. That's going to help set the stage for us to talk in this common language that we'll get into here in a second. From there, now we can start to define our skills and skills taxonomy. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to think about the skills that are actually needed to deliver our projects and services. So we're not so much concerned at this point about the skills and capabilities our resources possess today. We're more interested in what skills do they need in order to deliver those projects and services. Then we need to think about, once we have that list of skills, how can we organize the skills? How can we put them into different categories so that it's easy for our employees and for those that generate demand to get to the skills? We want to make it as easy as possible to navigate through that master list. Then we can think about proficiency scales. A couple of things I like to typically talk about here is, when we look out in the field, we see a 1 to 4 scale is most common. So you think about having a numeric value for your proficiency scales. We like to also have a one-word label that we can attach to each level in our proficiency scales, and then go one step further and think about having a longer description that we can use and include some objective criteria that helps us clearly define what each rating level means. And we do that to help reduce the ambiguity and subjectivity, as to what it means to be a 1 versus a 2, a 2 versus a 3, a 3 versus a 4. So we want to try to make it really, really easy for our employees to distinguish between the different levels in our proficiency scales. So keep it as easy as possible there. And then the last thing we want to think about is actually now deploying our skills inventory. And so, just like any change we introduce into the organization, we want to go through the change management process here. And that starts with communicating the vision and intent of the skills inventory. So what is that skills inventory? How are we going to use the data? Why are we doing this? How are employees going to be involved in the process? We can start to cast that vision for the team. We can then think about user input flows and use that to build our rollout and training collateral, and then start to enable users to complete their skill profile. And as they're doing that, we can then look to monitor compliance and make sure everyone has participated in the process. And we'll talk a lot more about that here in just a second. So one more point there. Perfect. So one of the best practices that we like to think about as we're building and deploying our skills inventory is sharing our primary roles and our skills with both the supply and the demand side of our organization. So the idea here is, if we can create that nice, tight, consolidated list of primary roles, we can share our skills list with those that generate demand and those that manage supply. We want to get them talking in common terms, using that list of primary roles, using that list of master skills, or that master list of skills, so that everyone's speaking the same language when we start to talk about our resources and our resource needs. And so once our skills inventory is built, it's now time to start to use it, right? And so, we know that good skills data is all about using it and getting good business value out of it. And what we find is leading delivery organizations, they use skills both tactically and strategically. And it starts at the top with the first use case, staffing. It's our most common use case. Skills data helps facilitate improved identification of resources. So finding the right person with the right skills to fill an open role. but we can use skills data a little more strategically when we start getting into capacity planning and forecasting. So we can go a cut deeper than just capacity planning and forecasting at the role level. We can also use skills data anytime we're launching new capabilities or introducing new technology into the organization. So if we're a PS organization and we're going to market with a new product, we can start to think about the skills and capabilities that are needed in order to implement that product or support it out in the field. You know, what are those skills and capabilities? And then when we look in our skills inventory, we can assess whether our team actually has those skills or not, and use that to then target some skills development opportunities. Same thing is true, or a very similar thing is true in an enterprise IT organization. If we have purchased as an organization some new technology that we need to support enterprise-wide, we can assess the skills and capabilities needed to actually do that, and then use our skills data to figure out whether we have those skills or need to develop them, go out and get resources that have them, and so forth. And that sets up our fourth use case there at the bottom, skills and talent development. So with a comprehensive skills inventory and a strong resource management function, we can look out into the future at what our future skill needs are starting to look like, then look at our skills data and see whether we actually possess those or not, and then start to develop some skills development programs to close any skill gaps we have. So the big point there is we can start to get a little smarter with data as to where we're going to spend our training dollars as an organization. And so one of the things that's really, really important about our skills data is this isn't something that we can simply invest the time and energy to build our skills inventory and then pick up and move on to the next initiative. This isn't one of those set and forget kinds of things. You know, I always like to think about a quote that I've borrowed here from one of my colleagues. He said it a couple of years ago, and I've always held on to it because it's absolutely true. And it's what you see here on the slide. You know, the data in our skills inventory, it's only as useful as it is accurate and up to date. And it never fails, whether we're in an RMCP class or out in the field talking with one of our clients. You know, we always ask the same set of questions. You know, do you have a skills inventory? If you do, let's talk about how you're using it. You know, are you getting good value out of it? And anytime someone says, you know, hey, we're not as effective with our skills inventory as we would like to be, and you start to kind of pry a little bit and try to understand why they're not either using the skills data or getting as much out of it, you know, we get kind of a couple of symptoms that come up. Either the skill ratings that employees put in there are not as accurate as reality would suggest, or the skills themselves no longer align with the needs of the business. And so, you know, inevitably, when either of those two scenarios pop up, you know, what happens? We see the same thing every time. We start seeing spreadsheets popping up. You've got resource managers or line managers or matrix managers. You know, they feel like the skills data is not accurate and up to date. The skills themselves aren't fresh. And so they spin up a spreadsheet and they take the skills inventory into their own hands, and they think that they can create their own skills inventory and keep it more accurate than what we have in our centralized skills repository. And so, you know, if you take one thing away from today's session, you know, I would ask that you don't do that. Don't do that. Don't spin up your own spreadsheet. Don't create this distributed skills inventory, and don't let that happen in your organization. So what I want to do is I want to give you a few practices that you can use to avoid that kind of scenario. And we'll start with keeping skill ratings fresh. So, you know, we want to use and define policies and procedures to govern regular skill updates. So regular employee skill updates here. So some things that we need to think about, and this is a really, really helpful framework for us. So first of all, employees should self-assess their skills. We get asked the question a lot, you know, should employees assess their own skills or should we have managers do it on their behalf? We recommend employees self-assess their skills. We should make all the skills in the skills inventory available for employees to rate themselves on. And then, you know, when should employees complete their self-assessment? When should they update their skills? We recommend a couple of times here. You know, one, anytime a new employee is hired and comes into the organization. So the easy way to do this is if you look at your onboarding plan. You know, anytime a new employee comes into the organization, that onboarding plan ought to have a line item in it to point that employee at their skills profile in your PSA or PPM system and have them update their skills. We should also have a formal organization-wide update 1 to 2 times a year. So a couple of places that are really easy to do this. Think about your annual performance review process. Whenever it's time for that annual review process, let's go in and update our skills. If you've got a mid-year process as well, or a mid-year review process, you can use that to get your second time. And if you don't like doing skills updates and performance evaluation at the same time, you could put your skills update in opposite quarters from your mid-year and your annual review process. So you kind of think about doing something, whether it's a skills update or a performance evaluation, at least once a quarter. So you kind of start to get into that regular cadence. And then employees should update their skills ad hoc anytime they roll off of a project or complete a training class. Anytime you're on a project, you've probably utilized some skills, maybe gained some additional experience, increased your proficiency in some skills. So let's go in and let's take a look at our skills profile and see if we need to change anything. Same thing when we go to a training class. We're obviously going to training for a reason. So what skills did we develop? Do we have anything we can add to our skills profile? And then certainly if we have any performance review or feedback, we would want to update our skills or ask employees to update their skills as well. And then managers should review and approve employee skill ratings. It's another place where we get a lot of questions. Definitely recommend managers providing some oversight there. And then the skills infrastructure, so the skills themselves. So we know that skills have to stay aligned with business needs. And so that means a couple of things. One, from time to time, new skills need to be added to our skills inventory, and obsolete skills should be retired as well. And so, the reason we want to think about that, any skills that are no longer needed by the business, let's get them to where they're not visible to the employees who may want to save the records that have been completed, but let's get them out of visibility for the employees so that we keep this nice, tight, consolidated list, because we want to make it as easy as possible to navigate through all of our skills. And so some things we ought to think about here. One, simply establish an owner of our skills infrastructure. So have someone who's responsible for driving the skill review process. Go one step further, appoint a group of subject matter experts. So we've called this a coalition of skill experts who can meet regularly and review the skills in the skills inventory. Generally we recommend doing this 1 to 2 times a year. You may want to think about quarterly or having a quarterly cadence if your organization produces a lot of products and new services. If you're really getting after new products and services, monthly might be the extreme, but somewhere having a regular cadence to review the skills is definitely recommended. And then develop a change control process to enable new skill requests to be submitted in between meetings of your subject matter experts, so that you can, if you've got some new skills that need to get in right away, you have a process to actually do that. And so the big kind of takeaway point here is skills should be reviewed on a regular basis so that they stay in alignment with the needs of the business. And so just a couple of points to kind of wrap us up here, a couple of key takeaways. The ability to characterize our skills and capabilities of our resource supply is absolutely paramount to being successful in resource management. And so, the call to action here, if your organization doesn't have a skills inventory, definitely take the time, build an initiative to go out and create one. Start by identifying the roles and skills needed to deliver projects and services. So think about what those roles and skills are that are needed and define those. And then once you get those in place, once you get that tight consolidated list of roles that you consider your kind of master list, share that along with your skills with the folks that manage your supply and generate demand, so that you can start to establish this concept of a common language. And then lastly, you want to define policies and procedures to govern skills data and make sure it stays accurate and up to date. And that's our way to kind of fend off the spreadsheets popping up and keeping our skills centralized in a skills inventory. And so with that, I thank you for being a part of today's session, and I want to turn things back over to Randy.
Perfect. Ryan, thank you very much for that in-depth look at this important topic on skills management. So just a reminder, we'll do a Q&A session here in just a couple of minutes here. I just want to go over a couple of things with those that are with us today. Is for awareness, if you're not familiar, we have a certification program called the Resource Management Certified Professional. It's a first of its kind professional skills development program for resource managers, where you can learn best practices. You get access to a toolkit that is password protected for you. if you go through the course. And lastly, an opportunity to collaborate with your industry peers. We've got lots. We have well over 200 companies that invested in putting their resource managers through this program, and it's growing. It's nearly almost tripled in size just in the last year alone for us. If you're not familiar with the program, you can go to resourcemanagementinstitute.com and learn more about it. But in summary, it's the course is program is a 3-day long classroom if you intend to attend it in class in person, or you can attend the course online by attending our online course, which is 2 hours a week for 6 weeks. The course or program is comprised of interactive lectures, case studies, and completes with a certification exam, which is done online. You get immediate feedback on your certification at that time. There is a recertification process. Your certification is good for 2 years. And there's a recertification process where you accumulate the PCUs, or we call them professional credit units, towards your recertification. That's $1,795 per person, and if you register early enough in advance of a course, there's an early bird discount of $100 when you do it. All materials and testing fee are included in the course. If you happen to be a PMI, PMP, you can also earn PDUs by taking this program, as well as shown there on the slide. Our next couple of courses that are coming up are the in-classes in Cincinnati, Ohio, November 6th through the 8th. And our next online session starts on November 27th. And again, that's 2 hours each week for 6 weeks with a little bit of light homework to get through the program. I also want to make people aware, if you're not familiar with, coming up October 3rd and 4th is our first annual Resource Management Global Symposium being put on at the beautiful Anatole Hilton Hotel in Dallas, Texas. I hope you will come join us there to learn, collaborate, and innovate. There is a $995 registration fee to participate in the symposium over those 2 days, but we will have a great lineup of speakers. And by the way, there are more in-depth sessions on this particular topic on skills management and a lot of other things related to resource management. So I hope you'll go to the website and check that out as well. So it's at resourcemanagementinstitute.com/symposium. And that'll bring us to our Q&A session. Before we jump to that, I do want to take a moment again to thank our sponsors, MavenLink, Upland 10 Rocks, and Keyed for the support of not only this topic, but their investment in time and interest in helping to advance the cause of resource management, because it's so important to every one of our project-based businesses. So with that, we're going to move into our Q&A. And by the way, anybody who attended this who's an RMCP, you can get a half a PCU for attending this. So make sure you log that into our website as well. So with that, we're going to move into our Q&A with our last few minutes. Ryan, the first one for you, who should drive the process for employees to update their skills profile?
That's a fascinating question. It seems like that one pops up in every one of our RMCP classes. So just a fascinating topic here. You know, I think for me, I think of that as being a partnership between the RMO and line managers or matrix managers. You know, I think there are different things that each one of those groups can do. You know, the RMO can certainly help initiate the formal kind of skill review process, and you know, as you know your resources, as you're aware of the work that they're doing, you know, certainly encourage them to go in and update their skill profile when they roll off of projects. So I think those are some things that the RMO can help with. I think line managers, matrix managers, you know, ultimately, I think they need to be the ones that are there pushing their employees from a compliance standpoint to get their skill updates in. So they ought to be, you know, kind of driving them in that direction. But definitely see this as being a partnership between the RMO and management.
Okay. Ryan, another question for you. Can you provide examples of skills to deliver a project? We struggle with managers wanting the skills database to include every module and product that our company develops.
we have heard that and run into that a time or two. You know, I think so much of this is organization specific. So when I think about the skills that are needed to deliver a project, you've got your delivery skills, you've got potentially, depending on the markets you serve, language skills would be another one. Your knowledge of technology, your knowledge of components and those kinds of things. The place that I want to focus on here in this particular question is the back half, where the person asking the question is asked about including every single module of every product. I think that's going potentially a little too far. If you create a really, really robust set of skills in your skills inventory, remember, every user has to navigate through all those skills to complete their skills profile. And so, I would probably push back there and try to keep that list as tight and consolidated as possible. So if we go back to the core focus, we're trying to use skills data to help us decide, right resource in the right role on a project. And so what information is paramount in order to figure that out? And so I would pose the question to this organization or whoever's asked the question, do you have to know down to the module level someone's skills and capabilities at that module level in order to get the right person on the project in the right role? Sometimes I think there are cases where the answer to that is yes, you do. And so you may need to go to that extent. There are others, and I think probably more often than not, the answer to that is no, that's overkill in a lot of cases. But that would be a kind of organization type kind of decision to make.
Okay, and another question I saw here, we're just about out of time. What about soft skills? Everybody thinks their communication and or presentation skills are excellent. One idea is to have managers rank their team members, but there is pushback regarding storing this type of subjective data. Any ideas or thoughts? You could quickly answer that.
Yeah. You know what? I'm a big advocate of soft skills as being necessary in order to put the right person in the right role. And so I think soft skills ought to be a category of skill in your skills inventory. So I would answer that part of the question that way. I think there's a couple of ways you can assess capabilities in soft skills. Asking employees to do that is certainly one way. I've seen instances where you ask managers to actually take that part on themselves as they evaluate their team members and see them out in the field, and they provide those ratings. So I think there's a couple of ways to kind of go with that, but soft skills certainly should be a part of your skills inventory, and I think it's part of making the right decision on right resource to put in a role.
Okay, terrific. There are a few questions we didn't get to. If you have a question that we didn't get to, I'd ask you to send a note to info@resourcemanagementinstitute.com, and we'll do our best to get you some answers via email later today or tomorrow. Thomas, I'll turn it back to you to close out the session.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Thanks, Ryan, as well. I thought it was a great session. Again, if you have any questions, you can send to info@resourcemanagementinstitute.com. We'll record some of these that came in as well and try to get you folks some answers. So again, appreciate your time. We went a little over the top of the hour, but I think it was worth it. Randy, Ryan, thank you for your time. Folks on the line, really appreciate you joining us for this quarter's Power Up. And we will see you next time for our last Power Up of the year, and that will be in December. So be looking in your email for more information about that. And with that, I'll say goodbye, and everybody have a good day.